Hey, welcome to the Lichen Sclerosus Support Network's channel and the Lichen Sclerosus podcast. My name is Kathy, and this is our journal of learning about and living with lichen sclerosus. Each week, I either speak to someone or research an aspect of lichen sclerosus. This week, I'm so excited because we have our first ever couple on the podcast. And this was an amazing conversation and so timely because it really does tie into this year's Holistic Healing Summit. If you've not heard about our summit, it is all about reconnecting and healing. Healing those relationships around us, whether they be with friends, family, or our partners. Because LS doesn't just affect us, it affects the people around us as well. So we wanted to reach out to our partners and caregivers and let them know that we are here for them as well. So this conversation is all about Annie's story and Annie and Michael's relationship and how their LS journey is going so far. And it is a doozy. You do not want to miss this. So we have a little bonus just for you, our video and podcast listeners. Up until May 6th, you can get 14 free video replays of past Holistic Healing Summit replays with your all access pass using the code REPLAY. Use the promo code REPLAY to get 14 free Holistic Healing Summit past replays, which are going to get you all set up and ready for this year's summit. It's going to be amazing. Don't miss out. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Annie and Michael. Welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. We've not had a couple on the podcast yet, so I'm really excited to hear your perspective and how LS has kind of come into your life and changed things, I guess. So let's start with you, Annie. When did you first start noticing that something was off?
It was the winter of 2021. And I thought I had a yeast infection.
Common.
Called the doctor, and he prescribed, just the usual. And then I happened to have an appointment for my annual exam with him a couple of weeks later and saw him and said, God, I'm still having symptoms. When you do my pap smear, can you make sure that it's like the treatment has worked, or are you seeing something? Just let me know.
Mhm.
And he did a wet prep and said, there's still a little bit of yeast, so let's continue treatment. And I continued that treatment for a full year.
Oh my goodness.
So just kept having symptoms, would call, okay, let's keep doing it. I will say, and I'm right or wrong, I never went back in to see him in person, just due to the healthcare landscape and the state we live in. He is incredibly busy with obstetrics patients. And so just fitting me in would be really challenging for him and his staff. So we just did a lot of phone consults and just kept treating for what I now know is a non-existent yeast infection.
Right.
And I really hate to think I've contributed to a lot of resistance to medication. Just me, myself.
Right. And so during that year, I'm sure, well, tell me, how did it affect your sex life and that aspect of it? Because if you're in pain, you're doing this medication, I'm sure there was some side effects of all that spilled over.
Yes, there's no denying it. I can count on one hand how many times we were intimate in that year. And it was more to do with not for lack of desire, but more of it's going to hurt.
Right. And Michael, when she came to you and was just like, "I'm dealing with this." Oh, wait, let me ask. Did she come and talk to you about this? Because I know for me on my journey, even though my husband's my best friend, I didn't come and talk to him right away. And there was like some internal, I don't know if it was shame or fear, but there was just something that blocked me. So did Annie come to you and talk to you? And how was that?
You mean, and I assume you're asking just in general about, her health conditions. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
when she was doing that 1 year of just treating for yeast or
yeah,
like when
yeah.
it started.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think we've always been open, since we've been married, open to one another about whatever medical issues are going on. And I mean, there were times way before this where Annie did have yeast infections, maybe every once in a blue moon. It would just tell me, "Hey, I'm having one.
Mhm.
Got to get treated." And so there's, not going to be any sex while I'm, being, using the medication, right? Because it's just, you can't. And
Right.
and so, yeah, so she came to me certainly at the time and was reporting back what the doctor was reporting. We talked about it pretty regularly,
Mhm.
so it was just the frustration was it just never seemed to go away.
Well, we actually got to, I mean, it actually got to the point where I thought, well, maybe he's giving me the yeast infection.
Right.
Right.
So talk to, go to the urologist, see if it's you.
Mhm.
There's somehow like we're passing it back and forth for just trying to go down every avenue that I could think of to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think a lot of people realize that their partner can give them a yeast infection. So a lot of the times we look internally, like, what am I doing? Or is there something, that's in my environment? But we never think about our partner. So that's a great, great thing that you did as far as that. And so I'm sure you went, got checked, and you were fine. Okay, so a year goes by, and then what?
And then my OBGYN is a very kind and gentle person. And so he knew, I'm pretty sure in the back of his head, he was thinking it's going to lead up to a biopsy.
Mhm.
And so he, we're this, okay, we've exhausted every avenue. We did the treatment, but then he also did some swab tests where they would send it off and do genetic testing. We did that, came back with nothing. And so then he said, well, the last thing we can do is to do a biopsy. So I just asked them, I said, well, can my husband be there?
Mhm.
Can I have some Valium? And his office happens to be across the street from a really great restaurant for lunch. And I said, can we have it be kind of around lunchtime so that I can have the procedure and then we will go to this restaurant and have lunch? And
Aw,
yes, they accommodated all of it. Yeah.
that's awesome. So, real quick, how was the biopsy process for you?
Horrible.
Horrible. Aw.
I will not mince language. I was not numbed enough. So he went into the two active, what I know now were active flares. And on the one side, got enough anesthetic. And then on the other side, I'm saying I'm not numb. And he just was like, just did it. And real
Oh.
fast. Yeah. Yeah. Michael was there.
Yeah, I was in
He was there.
yeah. So yeah, just answer your original question to me. Not only was Annie reporting back and open about it, but yeah, that particular visit, she wanted me there for the emotional support. And so I mean, I was in the room during the procedure, holding her hand, and to the extent women out there are comfortable with that, I recommend it. Get your
Yeah.
husbands or significant others involved. With that if you want that, and I think most men, I would think, are going to be willing to do that to support their spouse or girlfriends.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how was that, for you seeing her in pain? I only ask because I know, it's not the exact same, but my daughter had to have an abscess lanced, and the pain that I could see her in, I literally started crying because it's like someone you love is in that much pain. It's like that hurts you, right? It's like you're getting that. So how was that for you sitting,
It was
holding her hand?
yeah, it was difficult. I was glad to be there
Yeah.
to provide the support, but yeah, it's hard to watch, and that whole year was hard to watch. Obviously, it's not fully appreciating the suffering that she was going through. I mean, she's telling me, but I don't know what it feels like. And it was, as a couple, it was frustrating to go through all. But I was also hopeful that we would get, real answers from the process or the procedure as well.
Right.
That's also why I wanted to be.
So from a men's point of view, because I think for us as wives, girlfriends, as the female side of the relationships, we have a sense of, our partner wants sex. That's part of our relationship. If I can't give that to them, or if I can't, perform in that way, then I'm lacking in the relationship. And that's not fair to my partner, to the point where some people feel like, they should go out and have sex with someone else just to fill that void. Being in, this change in your relationship where you can't have sex for a year, can you give us a perspective of being the partner who's healthy and, still having that desire, but not being able to act on that? What was going through your mind, and how did you cope with that for that year?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I can only speak for myself, right?
Right, right.
Probably some men that out there who are going to say, "Well, I need to have the sex." In my case, and in my mind, I knew Annie was suffering, right? And so, the thought of straying to satisfy, a sexual need, just I'm not going to say it never came to mind. That would be false, but of course, I wasn't going to do that. She was already suffering, and so that's only going to add to the suffering. And then, she brought up exactly what you asked in your question. She would ask questions to that effect of, "Oh, I feel like I'm letting you down," kind of questions or comments. And I would just remind her that, "Look, I'm not frustrated at you. I am frustrated with you that we don't have answers to what is going on here." Because again, we were thinking for months, like she just kept having this recurring yeast infection. It would come back over and over and over again. It wasn't what it was, but we just thought, why is this medicine not working? And then, we would have sex and then it would resurface, and it turned out, it was because of the lichen sclerosus. It's not a yeast infection.
Yeah.
And so there was just a lot of frustration around that. But I felt like we did share that in a way. I just reminded myself of that throughout that time. I mean, I really wanted answers too. I did want our sex life to go back to what it had been before, but I wasn't going to hold that against Annie, right? And to be fully, open about it, I think we're also at a point in our marriage and our long time relationship where we openly recognize and accept that, masturbation is going to happen, there's no telling your partner you can't do that, right? It's
Right, right.
cheating. I know there's some people maybe newer in relationships that view that perhaps as cheating, and I just it's the wrong mindset. And so
Mhm.
Annie made it clear, like, I'm not going to be upset with you to the extent you take care of business yourself, so to speak, right? And
Right.
so that really the only difficult part there was we still have had at the time 2 kids in the house, so it was kind of finding the private time to be able to do that was difficult. But she was certainly made it clear that that wasn't going to be an issue, and I appreciated that.
That's awesome. So I think what I'm hearing is the communication, right? Continuing to communicate with each other and let each other know your frustrations, but also what you're open to and how you can continue to go through this together. It really kept you guys grounded in your relationship, but also acknowledging that you're both frustrated, that you're both still in it, and that you both still want to figure out how are we going to get you, Annie, past this where you're healthy, and then we can get back to that sexual relationship. I think that's beautiful. And can I ask at that point, how long had you guys been together and married?
23 years married, together
Wow.
for 28.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that's solid. I'm sure you've gone through many other things, and this is just the latest hill to climb in that in your relationship. So that's awesome. Once you did get the biopsy and it came back LS, how did your provider tell you?
So when the results came back, I happened to not be at home. I was on a trip, and his nurse, who I have a great relationship with, she called me and told me. And I don't think in his practice he has a lot of LS patients. So it's sort of this very casual, like, well, it's no big deal. And you just put on this cream every day and then you have it for the rest of your life. And call us when you get back from your trip.
Wow. And
And
how did that
at
land
that
with you?
point, I still had, like, I was still having trouble from the biopsy. So I was like, hey, hold on, hold on, hold on. I'm not filling that prescription because I'm not at home. And can I put that on an open wound? And is there something I can put on that wound? Because
Right.
it's really hurting. So, I mean, I think he still does. He really definitely kind of doesn't make a big deal out of it. And I think some of it, and he would agree, is that most of the patients he's diagnosed with it are much older,
Mhm.
in their 60s and 70s. So not that. And I still have a lot of life in front of me. So
Mhm.
I kinda he downplayed it a little bit, but the more I've talked to him, the more I'm like, "I'm not sure you're totally up to speed on, um, all the research, the treatments, everything." Because he started me on the cream, and I was
Mhm.
supposed to do that every day for forever. And
Oh,
yes, and so
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't so I start that's how I found you. As I started looking for other information, support groups, research, because even though I was okay, I have an answer and I'm using the cream, I still wasn't anywhere close to remission or even comfortable. And so
Mhm.
that's when I started to probably be a better advocate for myself.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. For my listener, how are you comfortable saying that? Like, how old are you or what age range?
Like right now, I'm
Well,
50,
when you when
when I
during
was
this time during
diagnosed,
yeah,
47, 48,
okay.
48.
Okay. Yeah, so you're not too much older than me, and so I'm sure you like entering perimenopause or dealing with perimenopause, going into menopause, which already changes all of our body, right? So I'm sure maybe I know I hear a lot like this is just a change, right? Some people think, oh, this is just a part of menopause, or this is part of just a change in my body, and so they don't go and see the provider and having those symptoms and then being told, "Oh, here's your answer, but, you're gonna have to deal with this for the rest of your life. You're gonna have to use this cream for the rest of your life. There's no cure." For me, I know that was like a high and then an immediate low. Like, "Yes, I have an answer." And then, "What the I have to deal with this for the rest of my life? What are you talking about?" So and you're on vacation. How was that for you mentally when you got the diagnosis?
Well, the first thing I did when I hung up the phone is I just Googled it real quick just to because he had told me, when they did the biopsy, I said, what do you think it will be?" And
Mhm.
so he had 5 different things he thought it could be, one of which was LS, but he thought that was the least likely.
Okay. Because of your age.
No,
Oh.
because I'm a minority and I'm not sure he could tell from my skin.
Mm.
So, like,
Yes.
it's not that I have an atypical presentation, it's just that I just don't think he saw it.
It's not textbook because most of the textbooks only have
So, and
I
I
understand.
because
Mine was the exact same way.
so,
Mine
like,
doesn't show up the same.
fast forward a year from that, and this was just 6 months ago, I see Doctor Bab, and he's got a light he has all these lights, and he takes all these pictures, and he's like, okay, well, here it is. I'm like, how did my regular doctor miss it? Well, he didn't use a light and to diagnose it. And we went for a long time just being frustrated and not knowing. But
Yeah.
what was your question now?
How it's okay. Mentally, while you're on vacation, you get this diagnosis, and then you said you as soon as you got off the phone, you Googled it, which I can't even imagine what came up. I don't know if you were lucky and got like the Mayo Clinic without the pictures, or you got the whole
So
shebang.
I got, the Mayo Clinic came up, some websites in Europe came up, and then I did look at pictures and I got out a mirror and I'm like, I just don't see it. Like I can see where he did the biopsy, but I don't see what I see in these pictures.
Right.
And so that was a little like I was like, I just don't see what they're seeing in the pictures. It's not, I mean, the biopsy is 100%, right? It wasn't like,
Right.
well, maybe it's for sure. But I
Did you
did
have itching?
no, mostly I had just burning,
Interesting.
I had some small fissures. Um,
So I'm sure that was confusing because, of course, the one symptom that's always blared out there is itching for LS.
well,
So
I think
you don't
some of
have
it
that.
might I did have a little itching, but when you have a yeast infection and they tell
Right.
you not to itch, and so I would sit on my hands a lot to not
Ah,
itch, which then that to me, then it feels like burning because I'm not
right.
itching it. And so, yeah,
Mm.
it was,
So how did you tell Michael? Or actually,
well,
let me ask you, Michael, how did she tell you?
I told you. Did I call you?
I don't remember specifically.
Or maybe texted you?
It was one of the two.
He was probably at work, so I texted him.
Okay. So do you remember like what you texted him? Hey, I got this or
I think what I texted is, "We have an answer,
Yeah.
and
okay.
it's this." And then, the name makes you think like it's a communicable disease,
Right.
right? And so I think his first question was, "How did you get it?" I'm like, "No, it's not. It's not. It's not anything that is transmitted between people."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say for me, I had the kind of reaction you did. I mean, I'm the bystander, but I had the reaction that you described was, well, I guess we have an answer, but the hell is this? And it sounds bad and permanent. And, I think, I may have looked it up briefly just to see, what exactly are we dealing with here. Fully appreciated the time. And then, of course, once Annie joined this network, and she's like, you need to look this stuff up too, so you understand what the symptoms are and what the treatment is and what I'll be going through. And it took me a little bit to get there, but I did.
And I would say definitely it's because of LSSN. I went back to my doctor after 6 months and I said, "I want the ointment. And if you won't prescribe it, I'll find somebody who."
Mm.
And he's like, "That's so funny. You called me because I just read a paper today about how the ointment is better than the cream. No problem."
Awesome. I want to say too about how you said to Michael, you need to look this up too, and you need to get informed too, because I feel like a lot of partners are just kind of told from the patient side, and it's just like, okay, that's your problem. You're going to deal with it. I'm over here. Whatever you got to do, you go and do that. But I feel like that then leaves a void where there can be a lot of misunderstandings and resentments that start to arise because the partner doesn't end up having the full scope of what this is and what this does to our bodies, to our emotional and mental state, and all of those extra things that come with an LS diagnosis. And I think that's why it's important that this year's Holistic Healing Summit was something that we wanted to make sure we created, and we got to an evolution in the organization where we were able to put this on. And there are going to be specifically talks from like Dr. Jill Kraft, who's going to give a presentation on LS and the symptoms. And she's not just going to be talking to patients, she's going to be talking to partners and caregivers so that they understand from their perspective as well. Hey, this is what the patient is dealing with. This is what you are seeing from the outside. This is what's happening in their world. So because it's very hard to have empathy for someone if you don't have a point of reference. So I think having the partner have this education allows them to have at least a semblance of a point of reference. Like they can't feel for you, but they can have a little bit of an understanding of where you're coming from. And that cuts down on some of that resentment that can build up in a relationship.
Yeah.
So,
And I would say, to extrapolate on that, I mean, not that I was ever resentful, but I think once we got access to the network and I think you paid for the summit last year, I'm not saying I listened to everything, but I certainly, it's like, let me watch some of the doctor experts you have to will explain this. And it was really helpful to hear that information, to hear correct quality expert talk about it. So it really gave me a better understanding of what's going on.
awesome. So now you get back and you have your cream. You started using it every day. How long did you use it every day before you found out, hey, I need to taper down?
Let's see. So from like March until October.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you did you have any side effects or there was
No, but I didn't think it was doing a good job of controlling
Mm,
my symptoms. And he didn't say do a soak beforehand. I mean, nothing like that. Like remission was never mentioned.
mm,
And, and I would see him at appointments and say, hey, there's this great network that you can learn more about the disease. I think some of it is that he has so few patients, like,
mhm.
no big deal, not on
Yeah,
my radar.
yeah.
So yeah, it was a long time. And then when he, I mean, it was very easy. He's like, yes, you can have the ointment. Then I asked, like, what about the soak? Because LSSN gave me all that information. So what about the soak? He's like, okay, I guess. What about, you know, doing it and then tapering off and getting, down to a couple times a week? That's a good goal. But I think
So
he wasn't entirely comfortable because he didn't understand that is a reasonable way. You can't just endlessly do this
right.
steroid all the time. One, it's just like at the time of like, now you do the soak and then you've got to
Oh
put it
god,
on.
yeah.
You have to rub it in. Like that takes a lot of just not like it's a huge amount of time, but
Well, daily it is.
end of
It
the day,
adds
it's like,
up.
hey, everybody, mom's got to go do her soak.
Yeah, it adds up. Daily it is. Absolutely. I had sinus surgery recently and I have to do nasal rinses twice a day. And even though it's, the process might take me 5 minutes, it's still 5 minutes twice a day that you really have to like think about and plan and make sure you get it done. Sometimes I jump in bed and I'm like, "Oh, damn it, I forgot to do my rinse and I got to get up." And so not only is it not just yeah, it's 5 minutes, big deal. But it takes a lot of mental capacity to like, you gotta think about this every single day, twice a day. You gotta do it. It just becomes like this heavy chain around your neck. So, soaking for 15, 20 minutes, that takes a big chunk of your day every single day. So I can completely understand how that can be taxing. And that's why I'm really happy that, we do end up being able to taper down. And like I tell people all the time, to try to make it enjoyable, try to make it something that you look forward to, like, that a luxury bath or, that you get twice a week or whatever. Just make it something that is not going to be your chore. So I appreciate the fact that you went that long and it was like every day. Ugh,
A
I would
little
have gave up.
because I mean, I, started to, what's the alternative treatments to clobetasol because this cream doesn't seem to be working very well.
Yeah.
And then I realized, okay, wait, you're doing it all wrong. You don't need an alternative treatment. You just need a different version of clobetasol. Oh, and by the way, taking it every day, months on end, just no, that is not the standard.
Yeah. You'll end up with that yeast infection you didn't have in the first place.
So it was, I've learned no one will advocate for me. And not that I don't trust my doctor. Of course I trust him. It's more of, I'm just one of many
Mhm.
that he sees in his day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rare diagnosis
Mhm.
from where he sits. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we're going to have a whole session on advocating for yourself. We're going to have a whole session at the summit on how to talk to your doctor about your diagnosis, because that's another thing that there's that whole dynamic for some people of, okay, they're the doctor, they're the knowledge bringers, right? So we just default to whatever they say. Even myself, when I got a diagnosis, you did more than I did. I didn't even go and Google lichen sclerosis. It was just like, okay, this is what it is. I was told differently. I was like, use as needed. So I just used it whenever I had an itch. And unfortunately for me, it ended up progressing because I wasn't treating enough. Whereas you were over treating, I wasn't treating enough. And so, yeah, I think in this situation, what is the saying? The tail wagging the dog. Like, you were leading the doctor, and he was just like, okay, sure, whatever, whatever you want to try. And thankfully, we were here to get you, the right advice. And unfortunately, in my case, that wasn't there. And for a lot of people, we're not big enough yet where they do find us. But eventually, we want to create a continuous education course where providers get that information so their patients are not leading them. They have the information, they have the resource, and they can treat and diagnose correctly from the very beginning. So I think your story is important because not just for patients, but for doctors to hear this. So though they know, hey, I got to step up. Even though I may have one or two LS patients, they are still important enough for me to do the research to reach out to whoever may be more knowledgeable in my network that can guide me through treating this patient. So because they deserve the same quality of care as my OB patients or whatever their specialty patients are. So let's continue on. So now you have your diagnosis, you have this treatment, you found us, you got your ointment, you're starting to apply it correctly. When do you start seeing improvement?
Let's see. So that was October. So then I did I started doing, the every day, then the every other day. And so I was working on that. And so probably what, January? Yes, January.
So March you got your diagnosis, and then in January is when you start feeling better. What's going on in your relationship in that amount of time? Are you being able to have sex, or are you just in the same kind of purgatory as before your diagnosis?
So yes, one, it's not yeast. So
Right.
we're like, woo, it's nothing's happening. No one's giving anybody anything. And I think probably not as much as we would have liked, but having an answer. And I think, lots of, having LS, you have good days and bad days.
Mhm.
And so, on good days, yeah, that all systems go. It's a green light. And then on bad days, I'm like, "You go away, don't touch me." So I think, in that up until we got to, once I got onto the ointment and things really started to get better, then I think things started to get a lot better between us. And the other thing that we started probably in December, we decided that we were going to make Sunday mornings our time.
Mm.
Also because we were renovating our bathroom and our bedroom was not by our children's bedrooms anymore. And our one daughter worked. So our light sleeper was gone. And we're like, okay, we can have Sunday mornings to ourselves. And so we just
started scheduling, which is important. Yeah.
It was scheduled. And so I think, once I started feeling better, and then we're like, okay, we have this we have a schedule and we have something to look forward to all week. And it's time just for the two of us. And I always had the option to say, ooh, I'm hurting. Can we find something else to do?
Yeah. That's beautiful. I think that's another thing we're going to be talking about at the summit is that intimacy, sexual intimacy, as well as there's going to be a separate session on emotional intimacy. But one of the things that I did learn from Dr. Klein, who's going to be our speaker, is you do get to a point in a relationship where sex doesn't have as high a priority, the kids and work and all of the life things, and scheduling sex is a way to continue to have that sexual intimacy. Because if not, it can easily become one of those things you don't even think about until it's too late. So good for you guys. How was it for you, Michael, during that transition period where you have that diagnosis, but she's not getting better right away, right? She's just struggling through figuring this out. How was it for you on your end?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the similar answer as to when it was still a mystery. We had the answer, but it was this fear of, well, is this going to be this bad forever? And I guess at some point, you did start feeling better and you're able to taper down, as you said, on the medicines. I thought, okay, there's promise here, but how much longer are we going to have to deal with this? And so I kind of still had the same mindset of I can't be angry about it. I can't be frustrated at Annie about it. It's just frustrating for the impact it has on our intimacy together. So yeah, we did, and we were communicating, but I think I personally, this is where I'll speak to the man perspective, and this is kind of almost more generic sex advice, is I kind of fell into believing some of the stereotypes too. Like Annie had been going through menopause around the same time. And I just thought, well, maybe her sex drive is just not what it used to be. I'm not going to bug her about it. I don't want to push her. I think, because I was still very much wanting to have sex. And that was probably one thing we didn't do a good job of communicating about. And sure, we'll get to that in a moment about how we changed that dynamic. But, and then, your point about the scheduling, I'd always been a spontaneous person, right? And a lot of men are. And I've realized now that we schedule it. Is it ideal? Yeah, maybe not, but I love it. I mean, it was a game changer for us, particularly with kids in the house. And the thing with scheduling is, like Annie said, there's an anticipation about it, right? And so you have plenty of time to be excited about it, plan for it, think about, well, what are we going to do this Sunday? We're in the house to ourselves, which has been a game changer.
Do you find yourself like just hinting at, or like on Saturday,
Yeah,
or, like
sometimes.
tomorrow Sunday?
And there's still opportunities sometimes during the week too.
I'm not saying there's not spontaneity.
Right.
It takes the pressure off.
Yeah, it definitely takes the pressure off. And I'd say the other advice I would give everyone out there is it also gave us the space to have time, right? And so if you're spontaneity person, you might only have 20 minutes before you go to bed or whatever. And so it's like, let's do it, but it's going to be rushed.
Right.
Whereas the Sunday time, it's like we are going to set aside plenty of time to make sure that we have, time for foreplay, for the sex, and even the afterglow of it. Just that it's really, truly intimate time together, which is also I'm very appreciative of.
That's beautiful. So it was a little bit over a year and a half that you were struggling with getting healthy again. And then in January, you started to see results. Now, the summit is in May. So January to May, you're kind of, what are you doing before the summit, before you actually see Dr. Bab and it's like, ah.
So on a whim, and it's because it popped up in my Instagram feed, I ordered a book from Amazon, and I would recommend it to everybody.
Mhm.
She also has a very fun Instagram group. It's called Sex Talks, the 5 conversations that will transform your love life. And it was by Vanessa, the author is Vanessa Marin. She does have a podcast with her husband. They do their Instagram together. And I know I've talked about it in the group. I, it's changed our lives. So I got the book and I said to him, I said, this is what I want for Valentine's Day. Will you read this book with me?
Aw.
So the way the book is set out, we would read the chapter, and then anywhere where there were questions, then we would go over the questions together. And I mean, they are wide ranging questions to learn about, how you feel about intimacy and sex, any hangups that you have, any desires it's the whole gamut. And I would say that book was a huge game changer in our marriage and our relationship, about how willing we were to talk about sex with each other, whether that was desire or fantasies or anything, things we were ashamed of. So I mean, Michael, you probably found it equally or more helpful than I did.
Yeah,
He really got into it, everybody. He really
right.
has become a sex and relationship podcast lover.
Yeah, that's
Tell
true.
us about it.
Yeah, that's true. I think, and to go back, so when Annie came to me and said, "Hey, I want to do this," it was like, please, because I think, again, we were doing a good job of communicating during all this, but maybe not a great job. And I don't want to speak for you, but I think Annie kind of sensed something's not quite right. Right.
Well, I think what I sensed is we've had this, and I will also be clear that the week that my symptoms started, it was 2 weeks before my symptoms started, my dad passed away unexpectedly. So there was already a lot of stress in our lives and a lot of difficulty and a lot of unhappy things
Changes.
happening. And so,
Mhm.
like, when I finally got to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm heading towards remission, I'm like, we've just lost ourselves just in grief and kids and a bathroom renovation and this diagnosis. All of these things have taken away from one of the essential parts of our relationship. And the one thing I worried about deeply, because I read about it in some other support groups, was people who were diagnosed with LS and within 6 months their spouse left them.
Yeah.
And then they were no longer sexually active in any way. And
Right.
that made me really sad. I had a painful conversation with my doctor saying, I don't want to give that up. You
Yeah.
have to help me, because I don't know. I'm a sexual person. I like having sex with my husband. I can't give it up.
Yeah.
Don't want to give it up.
Right.
And so that part of when I saw this book, I'm like, well, maybe this will help us just have a better conversation, like using the book as a way to get there.
Like a guide. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's interesting that, you think that after so long, everything about your partner, right? I've been with my husband 24 years, and you think over 24 years you've had these discussions, you know them in and out, and it's like, no, you don't. There's still always something new to discover. There's different ways to have the same conversation that turns over a new leaf, a new rock to look under, like, oh, what's under there?
Yeah, true. I so to add a little bit to what Annie was saying, this had been going on for some time, even before the LS symptoms and the diagnosis. Because she lost her father. A year before that, she lost her mother.
Mhm.
And a year before that, or a year and a half before that, she lost her brother. So there's also all these string of family tragedies and just so much stress. And then, at the time back then, I was in a very stressful job, and it just all this was just kind of perpetual. And then we end up with this medical situation. Thought, okay, maybe all that stress was behind it. And now we're dealing with this. It just felt like everything was just weighing on us, our relationship. And so again, I think, in that last few months leading up to her saying, well, hey, let's read this book together, I think my primary emotion was resignation, right? I just
Mm.
felt like, I can't be aggressive and say, well, God, I need to have sex. I want sex, when she's dealing with all this stress and family loss and medical issues. And so I just had kind of resigned myself to, I guess it's just the way it's going to be. And that part I had not really communicated my thought, because I felt like I didn't want to upset her even more, right? Was why I didn't share that feeling with her. So doing this book together kind of forced us to have the LS specific conversation. But then to your point too, even though we've been together 20 plus years, covers so much ground. And 90% of what we talked about in the conversations, I would say we kind of knew already about one another, to your point, but some of that maybe you learn a little more detail. But then there was that 5 to 10% or whatever it was of things that, I didn't know that about you, or that you like going on, or whatever it was. So
Right.
it was just great. I mean, I recommend it to everybody, but I think it has a role in this situation too, of people that are diagnosed with LS.
I think, it did help us broaden our thoughts on intimacy, sex, and hey, you're having a flare, but here's all these other things we can do. But we wouldn't have done that or even entertained it had we not gone. In part of the book, there's like this massive list of like, yes, I would do this. No, I wouldn't. Consider. It was probably like 200 different things, and we went through this list and we talked about it. And then some of her thing is about, you really should interview her for this podcast. One of her things is like, women kind of lose out, and it's like men have an orgasm, they know they've had an orgasm, and women, you can have one too. So her thing is like, everybody who wants to have an orgasm gets to have an orgasm, however you get there. So
yeah, and I would agree. I'd add a little bit to that. Not that we hadn't, that we'd always been, it's got to be intercourse and that's it. But we weren't focused on that, and probably me, right, focused on that. So it was kind of my game changing to say, well, let's explore other options when you're having a flare up. We can still have sex. It's just going to have to look different, right?
Yeah. And to be fair, it's not your fault. It's the way society, the patriarchy has designed. Sex means penetration with a penis in a vagina.
A lot about can I say it? It's not. Hopefully, we can say whatever here. She calls it the fucking fantasy, right? That it's there's a certain way to have sex that's perpetuated even just in our culture or social media. Not necessarily a patriarchy thing. I agree with you on that. But it's also just the way it's depicted in media.
Absolutely.
And when you talk to people who've been in long-term relationships, particularly older people, it's a popular myth that, there's less sex. It's not that it's less, it's just that it changes. It's different. And I think LS has kind of opened in a way, has opened eyes to that.
Yeah, there is a silver lining.
There is a silver lining.
Yes, I love it. I call it finding the gold nugget in all the shit. So yes, I love it. So I will make sure we have the podcast and the name of the book in the show notes so that other people can find it.
Even if you're, I was sort of surprised when I read the book. Like Michael said, we knew a lot of these things, but then just like we set aside time on Sunday for time for intimacy, before we did that, we would sit down with the book, go through the questions, just the two of us. If the kids were around, we might whisper it because they don't need to know this information about their parents.
Yeah.
And it was just a good exercise. And it was also not, we were fully clothed. We were sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, just going through these questions. So it wasn't like a high stress, like, oh, you're naked and you're answering these questions.
Right.
Really,
there was no pressure.
Right. That's not the time to have that discussion. And, when you're fully clothed with a cup of coffee is a good time to have that kind of discussion. So, and I would say we walk our dogs every night. God, I hope no one gets close to us, listens to our conversations. But that is a lot of what we talk about.
That's awesome.
There's a love of sex and relationship podcast. You won't believe what I heard on this one.
Oh, that's awesome. So January to May, you're diving into this book, you're having these conversations, and then you come to your first holistic healing summit. Tell me, first off, if you remember when you first heard about it and what made you feel like, oh, I have to come to this. I'm all in for this.
Well, I heard about it, because I was part of the support groups.
Hmm.
And then I just wanted more information. And so I was curious about, any new treatments that were out there. There were some sessions on, oh, I know there was one about vibrators, and we are like,
Hmm.
we're both in. We're going to listen to that one. We want to know all about that. And then, I mean, actually, there was so much information that we took away from it. We went about vibrators. I can't remember her name, but she talked about just how to take care of your skin. And
Hmm.
she had some information and what body wash we bought?
Sweet spot.
Sweet Spot Lab.
Labs.
So, like, they were sponsor, and so I'm like, "I'll take it all. Just give me the whole LS thing." And, like, now we use that at our house. Like, we love that the body wash is great.
Yes.
You can it's not just it's good for all of your skin. And
Yeah.
so I got so much out of it. Like, I mean, kudos to you guys for putting it on and, like, thinking of all the different ways LS can affect a person. And I think I walked away thinking, I wish there was more for my partner. And that's
Mm.
what you're doing this year.
That is what we're doing this year. I
I
love
mean, I
it.
think I filled out a survey and I'm like, please have more for the partners and caregivers.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
love
we
it.
listen. We listen to those surveys, so they definitely inform how we go forward. And it's funny you mentioned that the session on the vibrators, the sexual toys, we have that as a bonus right now. So until April 28th, there's 14 different past sessions that you get as a bonus that will get you primed and ready for this session. It gives you the groundwork if you haven't been to past summits to get you ready for this one. But yeah, it's going to be truly amazing. So at the summit, you meet Dr. Bab, who is amazing. He's a vulvar specialist. We actually have an episode coming up with him. And you see his session and you find out he lives so close to you and you make an appointment.
Mhm.
What has your journey with Doctor Bab been looking like now that you have a vulvar specialist to go to?
So the reason I went to him was that I thought I was in a flare.
Mhm.
And so I mean, it was like magical because, I went online and like, oh, we have an appointment today. Come on in. How far
Wow.
are you?" I'm like, great. They're like, how far are you driving? I'm like, 5 minutes. I'm not coming far. And I understand like a lot of people come quite far to see him.
Mhm.
So, he did the whole mapping of my vulva and like, oh, I can see where you've had fissures that have healed. And he's like, I see a really tiny flare, but everything else, we'll do a wet prep. We're going to do this. We're going to do the swab. We're going to do a urinalysis. They did all this stuff and came back. They're like, well, we think you have a UTI. Okay, fine. Like, I don't have any symptoms. Like, I'm very confused, but okay. Maybe you just caught it super early. And then I still continued to have symptoms. So I went back and I said, I still know what's going on. And that's when, in fact, Michael came with me to meet Dr. Bab. And he's like, well, I'll do another exam, but well, I don't see any active flare. Like you are in remission. I don't see an active flare. So he's like, do you mind if I do another exam? Go, yeah, go. I mean, so many people have poked at my vulva. Who cares? So he was really gentle, and he just takes the skin right on my inner thigh, kind of right near the crease, and he just rolls it. He doesn't pinch me. He
Mhm.
just rolls it in his fingers, and I mean, it was excruciating.
Mm.
Don't do that anymore. Please stop. He goes, okay. Do you mind if I do an internal exam? Sure, go for it. And he just starts poking, and he goes, it's your pelvic floor.
Mhm.
Your pelvic floor is so tight. So he shot me full of Botox in December. And I don't know why my pelvic floor was like that. Probably just the years of
I was
LS.
going to say a year and, 2 years of all of
That's
this
what he said. He
stress.
goes, are you a type A personality? I said, "Not really. Not people wouldn't describe me that way." And he's like, "Well, a lot of type A people have tight pelvic floors." But I just think it was the stress and of the of, you know, not having a diagnosis and getting to a diagnosis and the
Yeah.
grief and everything just decided to live in my pelvic floor. And that was magical. So then I had a real yeast infection. I'm like, aha, that's what it feels like. It's not LS, not anywhere close.
Not the same at all. Yeah.
I got it. So, and then I went through pelvic floor physical therapy, and everything is good.
So now you're in remission. You don't have that tightness anymore. You guys are having your scheduled and spontaneous sex. Michael, how do you feel the journey has been? Like where you are now? What's it been like for you if you had to sum it up for us?
I would say to those that, my situation out there, just hang in there. What can you do, right? It's we men have a problem with trying to fix things. We want to fix things, and this is something that you just can't fix. And I think I just did my best to listen and to advocate. It's funny, Annie, the conference last year was like, I don't know, should I do it? Should I? It's like, of course you're going to do it. You need to do it.
He did say
and even I'm like, even I might want to listen to a couple of these podcasts or see what information they have, just so I understand better. And we can continue to have this conversation about our sex life, because I'm sure there's going to be topics in there about that. So I would say, yeah, just hang in there. And again, we talked a little bit about the silver lining. Now looking back at it, it was, as I've repeated, it was frustrating in the moment. But now that we're kind of past it, she's got the diagnosis, the right treatment, she's in remission. It really did change things for the better for us in terms of not just the intimacy itself, but how we communicate about it.
Yes.
And I just cannot encourage that enough. I know it's tough. I mean, there's all kinds of experts out there that say it is hard in general. Talk to your partner about sex. And it's ironic in a way, because we all like it. Not all of it, almost all of us like sex. We want to have sex. We enjoy it. And yet for some reason, because of societal mores, shame, and et cetera, we just struggle to do it. And reality is, now that we're on the other side of those conversations, I am so glad we had them. It's almost a relief that we had.
We wouldn't have had the conversations otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it forced us in a way to have conversations that may have come up anyway, in terms of just aging and things like that, right? I mean, again, it just changes over time in the relationship, and you just have to accept that, but talk about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. I love it. I agree 110%. Communication is key. I say that all the time. If it really does enhance your relationship, even those tough conversations where in the moment you're like, I can't believe this. But when you reflect on it later, you've just learned something new about your partner, and they just learned something new about you. It's never a bad thing when you learn something new about your partner, because now you have new information going forward that's only going to benefit your relationship. So I love it. Thank you so much for being open to having this conversation, to being so frank and putting everything out there. I know it's not always easy to, we just talked about having conversations with each other, but then putting this out there for everyone else. So just thank you so much for doing that. Truly appreciate you. And I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on this year's summit, because I'm so excited about all of the information that's going to be out there for our partners and for our caregivers.
It's on the calendar already. So
Yes.
very excited.
I hope you come to our couples meetup so you can meet other couples. Oh, and Dr. Bab is going to be a facilitator at our couples meetup. So he'll be there to answer questions for
I
partners.
can give a shout out to Dr. Bab. He's the best.
That's good.
He's such a nice person. And I made my sister watch some of his Instagrams, and she goes, he's like the Fred Rogers of gynecology.
He is. The way he comes and sits down at the chair. He doesn't wear his sweater anymore as
It's
often.
too hot here for the sweater, but
It'll come back in
yeah,
the fall. But yeah,
like,
he's
I mean,
awesome.
if anybody has an opportunity to go and have an appointment with him, like I was the only patient there. So when you go for your initial appointment, you have the whole hour to yourself with Dr. Bab. And it was so unlike, I mean, yes, I had to pay for it. My insurance didn't cover all of it. When you have to file all those things yourself, that's the trade-off. But he was incredible. And so the exam was so thorough. Like, he took all the pictures, showed me on the screen what he was looking at, did it with different filters so it was easier to see the parts of the skin that had been affected by LS. So I myself I know, like, when I'm applying my clobetasol, well, I know exactly where I should be putting it because he showed me on all these pictures, like, here's the affected areas.
That's amazing. And he does virtual visits. So if you can do a virtual visit with him first and then fly in and come see him if you're not local.
You can fly in and call me and have lunch. The only thing that makes me sad is his office is not near my other doctor where I could go and have a nice lunch after being poked in the vulva. So, like, Dr. Bab, do you have like an ice cream cart or something like that so that I can have a treat afterwards?
Oh, so I will make sure to put Dr. Bab's information in the show notes too for anyone who's interested. He is excellent. Absolutely agree. So again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us. And we're happy to have this conversation.
Sex is one of our favorite things to talk about.
I love it. Me too. Aren't they lovely? I feel like as long as you have the communication and the openness and the desire there, you can really overcome anything. I hope you learned a lot from their conversation because there were so many gems. And just know that this year's summit is really going to supplement and really bring home a lot of those points that they talked about. So we're going to be talking about the intimacy, communication, sexual intimacy. How do you keep that going when one of you can't have sex? We're going to be talking about emotional intimacy. We're going to be talking about how do you have that communication with your partner when you have this illness? So all of this is going to be talked about May 13th through the 17th. I hope you can join us. Get your ticket at lssupportnetwork.org/WHS, and I will see you there. Bye.